Final Fantasy might just be the most oxymoronic name ever attributed to a game series. The fantasy part I understand. You could pick out any one of them at random and summarize it succinctly with angular preteens save the world from a heavy-handed metaphor for Christianity. But Final? Are you kidding? This series is more fucking saturated than a vaporwave album cover. There's 15 of them at this point, from the original with its 2D sprites to a straight up MMO, all telling their own self-contained stories. And that's before you factor in the sequels and spin-offs to some of those titles. Because you know this fucking girl needed a whole expanded universe to really convey the true depth of her character. But I jest. Though I have virtually no playtime with this series, I can't deny I understand its appeal. An over-the-top, colourful, Japan-flavoured romp to which subtleties as foreign a concept as puberty? Yeah, fuck it, I'm in for $1. Honestly, had this adorable nonsense been more popular in my little corner of the world growing up, I'd probably be a big fan. Unfortunately, the biggest games around back when I really started getting into gaming were largely modern military shooters a la COD, because I come from a generation for whom the definition of a quality game morphed from that of a well-paced, gameplay-driven narrative experience to something that one could use as a local anesthetic to numb the already atrophied neurons of a barely pre-comatose brain. Thanks, Zoomers. So where to begin? Where to make my entry into this obelisk of a series, this landmark of gaming culture? I mean, this is literally the only one I own, so it will do. Here's a list of things that don't go together. Pineapple and pizza, Alliance and Horde, my anxiety and stupid fucking college presentations, and Final Fantasy and shooters. Or so you'd think. Well, it turns out that this well-established series of JRPGs does in fact have a third-person shooter in its midst, in the form of this oddity of a title. Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus, developed by Square Enix, launched internationally in late 2006 on the PS2. You know, the only console that matters. It was a direct sequel to the original Final Fantasy VII, which came out 9 years and a whole hardware generation prior. Let me just reiterate, the sequel to this game, a polygonal turn-based RPG during which at one point the main character cross-dresses to seduce a mafia boss, is a third-person shooter, starring, the illicit love child of Duke Devlin and Van Helsing. According to legend, it was decided by the high priestesses of Squeenix that a single game would not be sufficient to encapsulate the grandeur of Final Fantasy VII's world, so a plot was conceived to right this injustice. 2 additional games, along with 2 feature-length animations, were to round out what is now called compilation of Final Fantasy VII, the first of which are subject for today, being assigned to game director Takayoshi Nakazato. However, it was producer Yoshinori Kitse who made the decision to go down the TPS route, because, get this, he liked shooters. The dev team, on the other hand, didn't particularly want to make a shooter, so some role-playing elements snuck their way into the final product regardless. I wish more studios were that ballsy. Imagine if at the end of every street race in Need for Speed you had to fistfight the other drivers, or if Bethesda made it so that their recent Fallout games were actually RPGs. Anyhow, let's take a look at the fruits of these devs' mildly tumultuous labour. From my limited knowledge, I believe that the opening cinematic is recounting the event that ended the first game. The moon from Majora's Mask is at it again, and there's a girl with short shorts and what appears to be an elongated tea cozy on her arm, helping EMTs. Our poster boy scales this factory-looking place and levels his gun at a really heavy sleeping scientist, but one explosion later, he's gonzo. Panic at the Discord hops on a speeder with shorts and zips away, failing to notice whatever ominous program the dude ran on this somehow still operational terminal. Cut to 3 years later, in a cave with Skrillex and some Crystal Angel lady. We get a lot of scenes like this alongside our regularly scheduled cutscenes, but they make no sense until way late on, so I'm gonna kick him to the curb for now. Then he's brooding on his bed, juxtaposing hilariously against this wonderful looking festival outside. That's a trendy Motorola flip phone you got there. Then, out of the blue, a host of dropships appear with some dangly boys, who start gunning down civilians and taking others captive. Naturally, Tall, Dark and Insecure does some fancy acrobatics to deal with one of the aircraft, and then you're dropped into gameplay. I should address the identity of our leading man before I offend every Western youth subculture formulated between approximately 1992 and 2009. This misunderstood young fellow is Vincent Valentine, a name that is actually surprisingly plausible given some of the others in this franchise. He was a minor character in Final Fantasy VII and was chosen as the lead for this game due to the potential for development in how vague his backstory was left. Oh, and get this, he shoots things with a gun. He's edgy to the degree that it's almost self-parodical, and yet it's played straight as if we're supposed to revere him as some embodiment of all that is cool in this world. He's got a Naruto cape, a claw arm, and a voice like wet gravel.
Rendezvous with Cloud and the others. It looks like I still have some work to do.
In other words, he's like so dreamy. This first stage follows Vincent around town as he tries to figure out what's going on. This largely involves saving civilians from these cybernetic looking soldiers and their attack dogs. It's good to see that this terrorist organization holds no gender biases, even if the female outfits are perhaps less than effective. But then, I suppose there's no reason why these strong independent women can't look chic while they commit their fucking war crimes. There's a few instances where you have to dispose groups of soldiers in order to acquire a keycard to proceed, which is a pretty old school way to slow down the pacing pacing of a game, but it kind of fits with how arcadey the gameplay feels. After filling a battalion's worth of Cybermen with lead, you come to this big courtyard, where you're assaulted by one of those dropships from earlier, serving as the game's first boss. This turns out to be a glorified duck hunt, given it mostly involves taking potshots at the thing, while avoiding chain gun fire, missiles, and the odd wave of grunts. Inoffensive as bosses go, but consequently uninspired. As already stated, Dirge of Cerberus is a third-person shooter. Kind of. The shooting revolves around an auto-aim function, meaning you can basically deadeye anything within your FOV. To be perfectly honest though, I'm fine with this system. As a guy who long ago made the switch from console peasant to PC gaming master race, tribalism. Trying to aim with a thumbstick in a high-pressure situation is akin to trying to dial 911 during a home invasion using only my flaccid cock. You start off with just a revolver, the eponymous Cerberus, but you pick up additional gun frames as you progress. This is where the game's RPG roots start to show, as you can essentially build and modify a gun from scratch for each of your 3 weapon slots. I find this to be an unobtrusive way of stylistically linking the game into the wider franchise, as anything more complex would be at odds with the fast-moving linear flow of things. We're next shown the controller exchanging ominous nothings about something called the proto-materia with a torso before we jump to Vincent chilling at home. But then Gorilla Man and Tiny Hacker Girl crash the party with some goons, which you put down while they just kinda watch like judgmental parents. Then Hacker Girl conks the fuck out. Probably missed one of those semicolons. It's understandable. Big Man picks her up and makes to leave, but not before introducing himself.
I am Azul.
Azul. Like blue. Because you're fucking blue.
Azul.
Then this official looking dude Reeve runs in. Reeve is the leader of the World Regenesis Organization, a resistance force combating these so-called deep ground troops. As the two are exchanging pleasantries, more soldiers rush in and gun him down.
That was a close one!
What the fuck did I just see? Vincent heads out to help kick Deep Ground out of town, which effectively amounts to a recycling of the previous stage. The WRO are so utterly useless, it's like they were combat trained by a Quaalude-faded Barney the Purple Dinosaur. On his way towards this church, Vincent gets ambushed by that same gunship from before. The fight is a bit more standard than the previous encounter. The thing hits harder but stays within the bounds of the arena. Vincent does this ridiculous shit when you win, and then Reeve and his elementary school class arrive to clean up. He assigns Vincent the task of investigating attacks on a town called Edge. Then the stage closes. By the way, am I the only one who hates having my performance evaluated at the end of a stage? Fuck's sake, I play games to enjoy a bit of R&R. I get told I'm an inferior beta male enough in real life. Guy gets eaten by a shadow. That happens. Then some WREOs get murked by this, burlesque dancer? Whose accent is in a constant state of flux between French and Russian.
The mighty WRO. They wouldn't last a day in deep ground.
In the back of a van, Reeve gives Vincent the whole backstory on Deep Ground and the Sviets, an elite unit to which Blue Balls and Moulin Rouge belong. I swear to God, every cutscene in this game, and there's a metric shit ton of them, is either utterly irrelevant or a barrage of unfiltered exposition. Roid Rage Marek Ishtar, aka Vice the Immaculate, interrupts them to show off his sexy mood lighting. The van gets attacked by robot dogs, setting up for everyone's favourite gameplay scenario, a turret segment. Yay. The van crashes and Vincent continues on foot. You're swiftly dropped into one of those gang boss fights, see Deacons of the Deep, gunning down this red top dog and his cronies. It's not really worth critiquing this as a proper boss encounter, seeing as it would just involve me dissecting the standard melee enemy AI, but I will say it's totally half-assed from a design perspective. Beyond that is another equally lazy fight against a load of scout troopers straight out of Return of the Jedi. They don't hit overly hard and go down really easily, so the fight is a cakewalk. I did get myself into an entertaining little mess where I completely ran out of ammo, so I had to slowly melee the last guy down when he charged me, like I turned up to a jousting tournament without a full grasp of the concept. Not long after he enters Edge, Vincent finds himself in a standoff with this one-eyed robot-armed scientist chick named Shalua. Now I'm no authority on skirts, but I don't think that's how skirts work. Their conversation doesn't yield much, then they part ways, leaving you to continue scouting out the locale. In terms of level design, Dirge of Cerberus is pretty middle of the road. Its stages are quite appealing aesthetically, with a lot of that charming PS2 sheerness, visually distinct enough that they don't all blur together into a homogeneous, flavourless mush. The game is linear throughout, and I will emphasise that linear is a descriptor, not a criticism. The layout of each stage is sporadic enough that you do get a sense you're more forging a path than following one. Most of them allow you to backtrack pretty far, though I don't see why you would, considering how vacant most locations are. You occasionally get a secondary objective flaunted in your face, but more often than not, this overlaps all too seamlessly with your primary objective, that being kill baddies, run forward. This leads to a inevitable repetitiveness as the game progresses, but I'll give it a pass in that it's no more so than some other better established shooters I can think of. Vince minces around town for a bit before he comes across one of the WRO soldiers from before, trying for best supporting actor as he dies in the rain. With his final few breaths, he directs you towards the warehouse where shit went down. On the way, Vincent saves a geriatric old man disguised as a child from a load of snipers cosplaying as hammerhead sharks. The little shit won't move unless you basically hold his fucking hand. Real trash tier escort quest bullfuckery. A few blocks further through anime Detroit, you find a welcoming party waiting for you in the warehouse, helmed by this fucking weeb. This is another one of those not actually a boss fights, seeing as the only challenge is surviving the first few seconds until you've taken out all the snipers. The big guy is a walkover, given his slow movement speed, the amount of available cover, and the fact that you can literally stunlock him with your standard melee attack. Vinny runs into the blade woman outside, who demands he hand over
The proto-materia.
Proto-materia.
Our boy is oblivious as to what this means, so she wastes little time in decking him through a barrier. Unfortunately for her, this has the adverse effect of evolving Vincent into Vincent, who blows her away with an arcane ejaculation before eating shit. Thankfully, Shallua rocks up to drag this maddest of lads away to safety. I wonder if that absurd skirt was legitimately added so that you could identify her from this angle. We're shown a scientist with the most fucking aggravating voice.
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Wile E. Coyote. Genius.
Shooting some dude in the gut, and then he's in one of those sci-fi plot convenient rehabilitation vats. The crystal girl is working on him. Her name is Lucrezia. Cut to a similar scene in the WRO headquarters. Vincent in the vat and Shallua outside.
It seems like the beast inside you went a little wild back there.
Went wild. Do you mean chaos?
Chaos!
Okay, so chaos in this universe is some sort of primordial deity thing, a
Sentient xenoform.
if you will, to which Vincent is infused as a result of some events in his past. Vinny seems to care a lot about this Lucrezia girl, and is surprised to hear she'd been researching chaos. Doesn't take a genius to put two and two together, but let's not pretend to expect subtle nuances from a game with this as its fucking cast. Reeve strolls in and they discuss what the Red Woman,
Rosa the Crimson.
said regarding the proto-materia and Omega. Another one of those.
Sentient xenoforms.
Hang on, Rosa the Crimson. Red the Red. Can't wait to meet the other Svets, Stuart the Beige and
Pretty fly for a white guy.
Shallua recalls that Omega is mentioned in a lost thesis by Lucrezia on Chaos, so Vincent is tasked with retrieving it from her old abode. But before you can leave, the HQ is assaulted by Deepground, and so to work you go. You start off scaling your way up from the foyer to the higher floors, checking heads as you go. Verticality by default is an admirable quality in a shooter, though the mundanity of its implementation here leaves much to be desired. After reaching the top and riding the Wonkavator back down, you get to hunting Azul through the bowels of the building. On the way, you encounter Shallua and tiny Deepground girl. Long story short, her name is Shulk, Shallua's younger sister who was abducted a decade ago and converted into an emotionless deep-ground espionage specialist. I actually appreciate the restraint shown by the writers in this interaction. A lesser script is a beautiful thing. A worse script would have had Shulk come over to the good side the moment she saw her older sister, but instead she gives no fucks about that sappy nonsense.
Even though 10 years have passed, you're still Shulk, my only sister.
Okay, I didn't say they figured out how to make their exposition sound like human speech, alright?
I should be 19 this year.
Honey, if you're 19, I'm having a midlife crisis. Reeve triggers the sprinkler system, shorting out Shulk's crappy plastic lightsabers, and then gives Vincent some tranquilizer rounds, or should I say plot-piercing ammunition to face her with. Shulk is easily the best boss fight thus far. She's highly zippy and evasive as befits her role and title, hitting not especially hard but very fast and then dodging away before you can get a lock on. Following this fight, Azul rocks up, showing off his nifty shield and chasing after Vincent and Reeve in gloriously goofy fashion. They find some heavy ordnance just fucking lying around in a hangar, so Azul deep throats a missile. Turns out this only breaks his shield though, leading into the second boss fight of the stage and easily the worst in the game. In summary, you dodge a few projectiles and AoEs, then shoot some explosive barrels as this brick shithouse walks past. The stage didn't need another boss, let alone this waste of disk space. Azul goes down like an especially irritating sack of potatoes, and Vincent is finally able to go in search of that thesis. His journey takes him through a sewer system under Lucrezia's manor. In this attempt to be covert, Vincent finds himself under attack from these Atlantean fucks. You slug your way through the murk in search of these two switches that you have to activate to proceed. This segment feels somewhat disconnected from the rest of the game, with something of a Castlevania vibe to it thematically. You emerge into the manor basement to find the place swarming with deep ground troops. Up a few floors and through this contrived shooting gallery, you take an elevator up to the manor proper. We learn that Vincent was assigned as a bodyguard to Lucrezia by Shinra as a younger, poncier man. There's an inexplicable substage where you have to play as this fucking thing from before. Kate Sith. It's a very short, pure stealth segment, the only time you don't control Vincent, during which you have to sneak past some guards in the Deep Ground HQ, basically to just contextualize what they're up to. Spoiler, it's mass murder. Then this spooky boy shadows Pusheen away, cementing how unnecessary this whole bit was. Back to Vincent, he finds a little glowing ball in the manor that sparks a hologram of Lucrezia. She gives us a bit of an info dump on Omega. In essence, he's a being that shows up when the world has fucked itself over irreparably, to take all pure life energy away across the cosmos, leaving the barren Earth to die. The stage thereafter sees Vincent scour this medievalish looking mansion for pieces of Lucrezia's work pertaining to Omega. On floppy disks, no less. I guess the place really is medieval. Enemies show up, enemies sit down, inhale, exhale, we are at peace. You can find the room where you first encounter Vincent in the PS1 game. Then you have to defuse some mines, even though I had no idea how to, so I used up all my healing items, dramatically diving on every single fucking one. This cave system leads you towards the final disc near the entrance hall. It's guarded by a solitary grunt who I'm assuming must be descended from that one loser from the original Dark Souls. You know the guy.
You, here, over here. Please, you must help me.
Upon finding her lab, Vincent flashes back to, you guessed it, when Lucrezia was working on him. Rosa is there when he comes around, pushing the boundaries for how smug a single person can be.
Deep ground. What are they attempting to do with Omega?
I don't know. And to be honest, I don't care.
What?
Yeah, what? You're a fuckhead. Vincent lines up his sights, at which point Rosa sticks a Walmart brand Immortal on him. This fight annoys me more in terms of aesthetics than mechanics. The thing has a few strong varied attacks and a couple of different modalities that it cycles through. I just feel like you shouldn't be fighting faceless robot cronies approaching the halfway mark of the game. After you've Baneling busted this Protoss scum, Rosa pops out of the woodwork and hits Vincent with some Temple of Doom shit, ripping out the proto-materia, which I guess was in his lower torso this entire time. But before she can finish him off, this burlap sack wielding an oversized shuriken hits her with a flashbang and aways Vincent to safety. Next we get a scene of young Vincent questioning Lucrezia and Squeaky, I think over their decision to aid Shinra in what would turn into the main antagonisms of the first game.
Are you sure?
Yes!
Oh.
Then she has like a stroke or something and, oh, I know that guy. That's XX Sephiroth Pone's Noob 69 XX. He's a fan favorite. When he wakes up, Vincent's in another transport with his rescuer, who turns out to be
The champion of the earth and the sky. I am the conqueror of evil. The single white rose of Wutai.
oh, it's Shorts. So yeah, she's Yuffie, one of the OG gang back at it to help the WRO. Reeve tunes in with some updates. In a nutshell, Deep Ground are rounding up and sacrificing people with pure life energy in order to awaken Omega early and end the world. Solid little kernel of a motivation given us at the core of an utterly batshit premise. In the meantime, Shulk wakes up before squaring off with Chalua, as does Azul, heralding another attack on the WRO HQ. Vinny and Shorts get shot off the road, because their transports have the structural integrity of a digestive biscuit in a cup of hot tea. So yet again, Vincent embarks on foot into the next stage. After taking out your assailants, you enter a valley filled with ravenous textas and big grumpy beetles. Soon after, you come to a deep ground outpost, standing between you and the WRO headquarters. After clearing it out, you enter an open area where you have to fend off a load of deep ground gunships in order to advance. Now listen, I'm all about intelligent reuse of assets and AI, but don't try and tell me that taking your stage 1 boss and sweatshopping it here 15 fucking times constitutes a difficulty curve. Once the flock of seagulls have... You have to traverse a stretch of tarmac towards the main building. It'd be unfair of me not to mention that this level segment is fairly solid from a team that had little experience with shooters. Inside the final gate, you face off with another attack droid, but contrary to the initial encounter, this one is far too easy. It has the same attacks as before, but for whatever reason remains stationary at the top of the stairs. So if you've min-maxed your pistol into the godlike hand cannon that I did, you can just one-shot all the grunts and then pick off Johnny 5 from cover. Inside the HQ, you head down to the basement to find Azul looking like an over-designed recent gen legendary Pokemon. Still inferior to Trubbish, mind you, and you do well to remember. He goes apeshit on everyone, including Shulk, so she uses another one of those materia balls to turn him back to normal.
Shulk,
Why do you stand in my way?
I had to protect myself. You were trying to kill me.
Checks out. Azul tells Shulk that she was merely a tool to the Sviets and that Vice has ordered her termination. Shalua pops the freeze ball again and drags Shulk away while she refuses to cooperate. This leads to a somewhat legitimately poignant scene, with Shalua using her robot arm to prop open this door while struggling with the shell of what was once her sister. She gets her through at the last second, but not before she can save herself from Azul, winding up in a coma.
She was a fool.
Although...
Buddy, you're a boy, make a big noise, playing in the street, gonna be a big man someday. You got mud on your face.
I'm so ashamed.
Hello ladies and gents, I do apologise for cutting this video short. It just wasn't feasible to get out in a single piece in any reasonable time frame. I didn't want to starve you of content for longer than it takes to gestate the average child, so while I won't make any promises, I can at least say that the next part won't take as long as this one did, so you can take solace in that, I suppose. If you enjoyed the video, sharing it with a friend would be much appreciated. Also, dropping a like and subscribing helps me out. There should be a link on screen right now to my previous video on contrast, and other than that, I hope you have a nice day, guys. I have to go do an exam now in about half an hour, so fuck my life.